So last week we asked the question, what would you prefer to see as our viewers, shrimp and grits or barbecue tricks? You voted, you decided, now let's get ready to cook. Okay, so shrimp and grits won. What a great thing, because honestly in the South here, in North Carolina especially, you're gonna hear about and see that on a menu quite often. And there's a lot of variations on how to make it. So I'm gonna show you a very simple way to do it that's gonna have a lot of flavor pop, which is wonderful. And we're even gonna talk about the shrimp a little bit since that is the star of the show. So let's get cooking. Okay, before we get started, this is a dinner for two, and you're gonna think, hey, I need to go ahead and put 2 cups of chicken stock on the stove. You grab the first pan you come to, and it's gonna end up being too small. So let me just tell you, if it looks about this big, let's put it over here. We're adding 2 cups of chicken broth, a 1/2 cup of stone ground grits, and then we're also gonna add cheese, which is all gonna swell, it's gonna simmer. A 2-quart saucepan is gonna give us more surface area, more heating area, less chance of scorching, and of course, less chance of spilling. So we're gonna get that fired up. We're gonna add 2 cups of chicken broth. Now you can come to chicken broth multiple ways. You can make it yourself. You can buy it in a carton at the store. I advise you to stick with one that's lower in sodium, so avoid chicken bouillon and water altogether, because that's mostly salt. And you'll notice some recipes even say, just use water. This is the base element of our dish. That's why we're doing stone ground grits and not instant grits, because here in the South we do slow and low, and instant grits, it's a no-no. But the idea is if we can have some flavor in the grits underneath the shrimp and the bacon and everything else, then the entire dish is gonna shine, instead of just having a great shrimp on top of a very bland base of grits. So while this warms up, we're gonna go ahead and get started over here. Okay, I wanted to jump ahead briefly because while that liquid is warming over here, I wanted to go ahead and peel and devein our shrimp. You're probably thinking, but Jim, you still have to add the grits to the liquid and get it started. Well, actually what I wanna do is add shrimp shells first. Why shrimp shells? Because they're already on our shrimp and they're gonna add a much greater level of flavor and richness to the grits, which of course are the base for the dish, so why throw them away? You may say, but I purchase a bagged shrimp and it comes peeled and deveined already. Not a problem. Go ahead and add the stems of some vegetables. Maybe if you've made a salad and you've got some carrot and onion and things like that, go ahead and put that in the stock. But for today, we're gonna do it with shrimp shells. And I wanted to cover 2 different types of shrimp. So I'm gonna show you a quick picture. Okay, so in my hand are those 2 shrimp I just showed you. This one over here is from a frozen bag, which has already been deveined, but the shell's still on. This one is a North Carolina coastal shrimp, so of course that's gonna be my favorite. But the reality is we have a much wider, thicker body to this shrimp, which is gonna cook better and taste better, and it's also not been frozen. This one has been frozen, and whenever they freeze them, it really breaks down the flesh a little bit, and they get a little bit more spongy, because they pack it with a sodium-based water, and that counts in the weight of the shrimp. So these 2 little guys are technically the same size because they are 21 to 30. However, you and I can both tell these are not the same size shrimp. So what is 21 to 30? And just really quick to cover that. When you see different bags and different signs for shrimp, there's always a number attached to it. The number is how many units you expect per pound. So in a 21 to 30, you're gonna get somewhere in the 21 to 30 shrimp range. The larger the number, the more shrimp, which means the smaller the shrimp. So if you wanted those colossal shrimp that you could stuff and do some great sautés with, you're gonna go down to something where you're gonna get maybe 10 or 12 per pound. But for our dish, 21 to 30 is ideal. So let's go ahead and start peeling and deveining these shrimp. Okay, I'm sure most of you are thinking, there's no way I'm gonna peel and devein a shrimp, but I promise you it's not as hard as you think. If you've already bought them peeled and deveined, not a problem, you can skip past this section. But if you're feeling just the tiniest bit adventurous today, I wanna go ahead and show you how easy it is. So I'm gonna pick up one of the shrimp intact, and you're gonna notice the shell goes all the way around. This section here is exactly what you're used to from getting a shrimp cocktail or scampi or something. So you're gonna hold and pinch this section with one hand. In here, you've got kind of the leg area, but this is more exposed. So you reach your finger inside and you start peeling it back. Take the legs with you. And I know that sounds kind of creepy, and we're gonna come back around for that one there, but now you're exposing the flesh of the shrimp. As you come around to this side, peel down. See how that came with us? Now this gives us a larger work area, so go ahead, reach in again, come around. Okay, when you get around to the front that next time, you can usually get just about everything off in one shot. And here I have a shell to go in my stock. So deveining, what is that? Well, it's not exactly a vein. It's more like a waste chute. So now we have this deshelled shrimp. And along the back is where that waste chute is. So we're gonna go ahead with a paring knife and just slit about 1/8 of an inch, just enough to open this up. And you'll notice there it is. So we come over here to the water, turn it on lightly, just peel it out, and now we have a clean shrimp. I've got you back on the stove side. I added this shrimp shells probably about 4 or 5 minutes ago. Got a light simmer going on here, no crazy boil, but you can tell the shrimp shells have turned pink. They've picked up a little of the yellow from the chicken stock, so they're definitely cooked and they've done their part. So now it's time to grab a slotted spoon and start pulling them out. And as we do this, you want to make sure that if there's any of those little legs hanging around in there, you're going to go ahead and get them out too, only because you don't want them to show up in the final product. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and add our grits. But to give you an idea, there's a couple of different types of grits that you're going to commonly see. This is just a stone ground white corn grit. And you say, well, why white, Jim? Yellow corn is very popular, and it is. And most grit recipes, that's what they use. I like to make this like a painter's canvas, and so this is the palette that everything's going to be based on. If it's very yellow or very orange, I think it takes away from the bright pink of the shrimp. It's going to take away from the beautiful color of the bacon, as well as the little green onion we're going to dress it with. So we're going to add a half a cup, and if you remember from our last episode, dry cups and wet cups, we're going to go ahead and use our knife and ensure that we have the correct amount. And then we're going to just sort of slowly add it. We don't want to make it into a big clump, so we're going to go ahead and whisk that. If you've never made grits before, I did want you to see what it looks like inside of here, because you might think, that looks a little runny. But the idea is the grits themselves are going to soak up a lot of that liquid, so being very wet at this stage while it simmers is absolutely okay. Now we're going to put it down on low and put a lid on it. Okay, so every episode I want to share one food hack, if you will. Something that I do that makes things a little bit easier, especially when you're dealing with an important ingredient like bacon. You're probably thinking, well, Jim, I know how to cut bacon. This really isn't that hard, but I promise you, this makes life so much easier. And if you've ever tried to cut and chop bacon after you've cooked it, the knife cuts and the pieces get very different because the bacon is wrinkled from frying, or it might be too thin in some sections. So what I've done is I've actually frozen 3 thick slices of bacon in plastic wrap. And then this way you can see they thaw pretty quick. I just took them out a minute ago, but they're a lot firmer, so they're easier to cut through. So I'm going to pull the camera in really close and show you what this looks like. Okay, so I have my 3 slices of bacon right here. You can see they're all nice and stacked on top of each other. The end that has the little bit of the divot here, I'm going to make that last. So as I go through and start slicing, you'll notice I can go through with ease and everything still stays in line. So go a little bit further on the next one here. The bacon will move around, obviously, but it won't move around as much as when it's very warm and limp, like taking it just straight out of the package and putting it directly on the cutting board. So again, what I've established now is 4 nice lines. Then I can just come around this side, squeeze them together, start cutting. And just to show you really quick, so then what we have are these nice cubed pieces of thick bacon that are going to not only cook evenly, but they're also going to look really pretty in the final presentation. Okay, you can hear the bacon in the background. It smells great, but I wanted to get some prep work done. So what I've done is cut my green onions already on a bias. So that just means you cut it on an angle so it creates these cool little shapes. They're kind of oblong instead of just round little circular pieces. And I've started grating my cheese. So we need 1 cup of cheese. And again, I'm using a white cheddar, just like the white grit, because I want the shrimp and the bacon and the scallion to show up as the stars of the show. And yes, I said scallion, which is the other word for green onion, so do not worry. As you can see, what I've started to do is pull the bacon out, the bacon fat, and I'm putting them in a small bowl on a paper towel because I want to make sure that they stay nice and crunchy. If you leave something in its own fat for too long, it's going to taste soggy and greasy. So the idea is, let's get this out of the fat, let it drain off a little bit. Then we're going to take the fat, pour it in a separate bowl. All right, grits have cooked for about 18 minutes. Nice steam. They stay on the lowest setting possible. As you'll notice, They're nice and thick, not quite like a mashed potato just yet. They're gonna finish cooking just a little bit once the cheese is in. So we're gonna go ahead and sprinkle our cheese. Of course, it's all gonna clump together, but that's okay. And then just work it in. Once you have it well incorporated, off the heat, we're just gonna put the lid back on and let it hang out until we're ready to plate. Okay, so now it's time to finally cook the shrimp. That's the part you've all been waiting for. So in my saute pan, I've added 2 tablespoons of the bacon fat back, and it's the nice and clean kind too, so you don't have those bits that we just wiped out. I still have my bacon over here. I've got my green onion. I have a half of a lemon, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit. And I also have some Creole seasoning, and these are available all over the place, various heat levels, so depending on what you like, pick one that you're good with. But what we want to do is sprinkle it onto the shrimp before we cook them. And the idea is we want it to kind of attach to the shrimp a little bit and give it a little bit more flavor as it cooks. If we do it at the end, it's not going to impart into the shrimp. So we're going to get this up to a medium high. We're going to mix these around a little bit so they're well coated in the seasoning. And we're going to get them down into our pan. You can hear the sizzle, you know you've got it right. The last thing you want to do is put something like shrimp that's very delicate and cooks quickly into a pan that is not warm enough. Okay, so the shrimp are just about done on the first side. We're going to get ready to flip them over and then add our other ingredients. And once we flip them, now we can go to our finishing ingredients. So the bacon fat has now taken on some of the color of the seasoning, which is in turn going to create almost like a sauce for us. So we're going to go ahead, add back our bacon. So we're going to add a tablespoon of butter. Butter late in the dish also gives everything a sheen. So the addition of butter is going to help marry all of the flavors before we add our lemon, as well as just put a glossy shine on the shrimp on top of the grits. When you see it, you'll know exactly what it did. And I'm adding lemon juice. And the idea of adding an acid, especially when you're dealing with the seafood, is it's going to cut a lot of the fat that we've added to both the shrimp and to the grits. Now we're going to go ahead and add the green onions. Turn off the heat. So our grits are all set. If you look, got that nice mashed potato kind of look now, slow moving around. We're going to go ahead, scoop them into the bowl here. I'll show you this before I add the shrimp so you can see the beauty in it. Okay, so I've put some toast points in there, which is just a grilled sourdough bread in the shape of a heart, because again, this is a dinner for 2. I'm going to use a spoon here. Just start grabbing my shrimp. Each portion is going to get 4 shrimp. Kind of crisscross their tails a little bit over here. You'll see that in just a second. So you can see we're putting that together over here. Here we go, that last one just wanted to go there, so there it is. Gonna grab some of this delicious pan sauce of green onion, bacon, and butter. Okay, home cooks, now it's your turn to go make some shrimp and grits. But remember, like, comment, and subscribe so we can stay in touch. And don't you worry, barbecue lovers, I heard you loud and clear. So the Barbecue Tricks episode is coming in 2 weeks, but there's gonna be an extra special thing in there. We're gonna make barbecue sauce together. An all-purpose barbecue sauce that you probably never thought you could make in your own kitchen. Can't wait to see you then. In the meanwhile, enjoy some shrimp and grits.